Don Bosco's vision on hell, compared to the other saints in the church, has to be the most striking. What insights did this saint gain with this vision? How can these insights help us in our daily lives and bring us closer to God? Hi, and welcome to another video. So the purpose of this video is not to intimidate anyone into following the faith. This is not the way of God. It is not what we believe. Rather, the purpose of this video is taking into account what we believe, that the human being is both spiritual and physical. Just as we have battles in the physical, we also have battles to face in the spiritual. So, without further delay, I give to you Don Bosco's vision. A voice said to me, "Why don't you tell them?" I turned in that direction and saw a distinguished individual standing by my bed. Feeling guilty about my silence, I asked, "What should I tell my boys?" The angel replied, "What you have seen and heard in your last dreams, and what you have wanted to know, I shall reveal to you tomorrow night." Then he vanished. I spent the whole next day worried about the miserable night in store for me. And when evening came, I did not want to go to bed. I sat in my desk browsing through books until midnight. The mere thought of having more nightmares thoroughly scared me. However, with great effort, I finally went to bed, lest I should fall asleep immediately and start dreaming. I set my pillow against the headboard and practically sat up. But soon, in my exhaustion, I simply fell asleep. Immediately, the same person of the night before appeared at my bedside. "Get up and follow me," he said. "For heaven's sake," I protested. "Leave me alone. I'm exhausted. Besides, nightmares have completely worn me out." "Get up," he repeated. "You have no time to lose." I complied and followed him. "Where are you taking me?" I asked. "Come with me and you'll find out." I followed him in silence. Suddenly, I saw a road ahead. We took the road. It was beautiful, wide, and neatly paved. Roses, especially, peeped everywhere through the leaves. I felt I was effortlessly gliding through the air. I became aware that the oratory boys and very many others, whom I did not know, were following me. As I was looking at them, I noticed how one and then another would fall to the ground and instantly be dragged by an unseen force towards a frightful drop, distantly visible, which sloped into a furnace. "What makes these boys fall?" I asked my companion. "Take a closer look," he replied. I did. Traps were everywhere, some close to the ground, others at eye level, but all well concealed. Unaware of their danger, many boys got caught, and they tripped. They would sprawl to the ground, legs in the air. Then, when they managed to get back onto their feet, they would run headlong down the road towards the abyss. Seeing that many boys were caught in those traps, I asked, "Why do so many get caught? Who pulls them down? Go nearer and you will see," he told me again. I followed his advice. I picked up one of the traps and tugged. I immediately felt some resistance. I pulled harder, only to feel that instead of drawing the thread closer, I was being pulled down myself. I soon found myself at the mouth of the frightful cave. I halted, unwilling to venture into that deep cavern, and again started pulling the thread toward me. After a while, a huge, hideous monster emerged, clutching a rope to which all the traps were tied together. He was the one who instantly dragged whoever got caught in one of them. I won't try to match my strength with his, I said to myself. I'll certainly lose. I'd better fight him with the sign of the cross and with short invocations. Then I went back to my guide. Now you know who he is, he said to me. I surely do. It is the devil himself. Carefully examining the traps, I saw that each one bore an inscription: pride, disobedience, envy, sixth commandment, theft, gluttony, sloth, anger, and so on. Stepping back to see which ones trapped the greater number of boys, I discovered that the most dangerous were those of impurity, disobedience, and pride. Many other traps also did great harm, but not as much as the first two. Looking more closely, I spotted knives among the traps. A providential hand had put them there for cutting oneself free. These knives symbolized meditation and spiritual reading. There were also swords representing devotion to the Blessed Sacrament, especially through frequent Holy Communion, and devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. There was also a hammer symbolizing confession, and other knives representing devotion to Saint Joseph, to Saint Aloysius, and to other saints. By these means, a few boys were able to free themselves and evade capture. When my guide was satisfied that I had observed everything, he made me continue along that rose-hedged road. But the further we went, the scarcer the roses became. Long thorns began to show up, and soon the roses were no more. And then, at the bottom of the precipice, at the entrance of the dark valley, an enormous building loomed into sight, facing our road. I became smothered by suffocating heat, while a greasy green tinted smoke, lit by flashes of scarlet flames, rose from beyond these enormous walls, which loomed higher than mountains. Where are we? And what is this? I asked my guide. Read the inscription on the door, and you will know. I looked up and read these words. I realized that we were at the gates of hell. The guide led me all around this horrible place. At regular distances, we passed huge bronze gates. On each was a huge inscription. Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, which was prepared for the devil and his angels. Then another, every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Then I looked up in terror and saw in the distance someone racing down the path at an uncontrollable speed. I kept my eyes on him, trying to identify him. And as he got closer, I recognized him as one of my boys. He wanted to stop, but could not. Tripping on the protruding stones, he kept falling, even faster. Let's help him. Let's stop him, I shouted, holding out my hands in vain effort to restrain him. Leave him alone, the guide replied. Why? Don't you know how terrible God's vengeance is? Do you think you can restrain one who is fleeing from his wrath? Replied my guide. As the boy crashed into one of the doors, it sprang open with a roar. As swiftly as they had opened, the doors then slammed shut again. 3 other boys of ours, screaming in terror and with arms outstretched, were rolling down one behind the other like massive rocks. I recognized them as they too crashed against the door. In that split second, it sprang open. The 3 lads were sucked into that endless corridor, and then the doors banged shut again. At intervals, many other lads came tumbling down after them. Again, the doors would open thunderously and slam shut with a rumble. Then dead silence. Bad companions, bad books, and bad habits, my guide exclaimed, are mainly responsible for so many eternally lost. The traps I had seen earlier were indeed dragging the boys to ruin. Seeing so many going to perdition, I cried out, if so many of our boys end up this way, we are working in vain. How can we prevent such tragedies? This is their present state, my guide replied. But that is where they would go if they were to die now. Do you really believe that some of them would reform if you were to warn them? Then and there, your warning might impress them, but soon they will forget it, saying it was just a dream, and they will do worse than before. Others, realizing that they have been unmasked, will receive the sacraments, but this will be neither spontaneous nor meritorious. Others will go to confession because of the momentary fear of hell. Then, is there no other way to save these unfortunate lads? Please tell me what I can do for them. They have superiors. Let them obey them. They have rules. Let them observe them. They have the sacraments. Let them receive them. Just then, a new group of boys came hurtling down, and the portals momentarily opened. Let's go in, the guide said. I pulled back in horror. Come, my guide insisted. You will learn much. We entered that narrow, horrible corridor. Threatening inscriptions shone eerily over the inner gateways. I asked my guide if I could read them, and he consented. These were the inscriptions. They will be tormented day and night, forever and ever. Here, disorder and everlasting horror dwell. Job 10, verses 22. The smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. While I moved from one inscription to the other, my guide, who had stood at the center of the courtyard, came up to me and said, from here on, he said, no one may have a helpful companion, a comforting friend, a loving heart, a compassionate glance, or a benevolent word. All that is gone forever. He stepped into a corridor, at whose far end an observation platform. As soon as I crossed its threshold, I felt an indescribable terror and dared not to take another step. Ahead of me, I could see something like an immense cave, which gradually disappeared into recesses sunk far into the bowels of the mountain. They were all ablaze, but theirs was not an earthly fire. Everything was glowing white at temperatures of thousands of degrees. Yet the fire did not incinerate, did not consume. I simply can't find words to describe the cavern's horror. I was staring in bewilderment about me when a lad dashed out of the gate, seemingly unaware of anything else. He emitted a most shrilling scream and plummeted into the center of the cave. Instantly, he too was incandescent and perfectly motionless. While the echo of his dying wail lingered for an instant more, terribly frightened, I stared briefly at him for a while. He seemed to me one of my oratory boys. Isn't he so and so? I asked my guide. Yes, was the answer. Other boys kept hurtling in the same way in increasing numbers, all screaming the same way and then all becoming equally motionless and incandescent. I then recalled what is written in the Bible to the effect that as one falls into hell, so he shall remain. Where the tree falls, there it shall lie. Ecclesiastes 11 verses 3. Just then, the entire ceiling of the cave became as transparent as crystal and revealed a patch of heaven. And their radiant companions, all safe for all eternity. The poor wretches, fuming and panting with envy, burned with rage because they had once ridiculed the just. The wicked shall see and shall be angry. He shall gnash his teeth and pine away. Psalms 111 verses 10. Pressing my ear to the crystal window, I heard screams and sobs. blasphemies against the saints. It was a tumult of voices and cries, shrill and confused. When they recalled the happy lot of their good companions, he replied, "They are obliged to admit, fools that we were. Their lives were deemed madness, and their deaths dishonored. See how they are counted amongst the sons of God. Their lot is with the saints. We, then, have strayed from the way of truth." Here, one could see how atrocious was the remorse of those who had been pupils in our schools. What a torment was theirs to remember each unforgiven sin and its punishment, the countless, even extraordinary means they had, and their lack of response to the many favors promised and bestowed by the Virgin Mary. What a torture to think that they could have been saved so easily, yet now are irredeemably lost, and to remember the many good resolutions made and never kept. Hell is indeed paved with good intentions. Now that you have seen what others suffer, you too must experience a touch of hell. "No, no," I cried in terror. He insisted. "Only one touch," he commanded, "so that you may understand what the last all must be like, if the first is so unendurable. Look at this wall." I did intently. "There are 1,000 walls between this and the real fire of hell," my guide continued, "each 1,000 measures thick and equally distant from the next one. Each measure is 1,000 miles. This wall, therefore, is millions and millions of miles from hell's real fire. It is just a remote rim of hell itself." When he said this, I instinctively pulled back, but he seized my hands, forced it open, and pressed it against the first of the 1,000 walls. The sensation was so utterly excruciating that I leapt back with a scream and found myself sifting up in my bed. My hand was stinging, and I kept rubbing it to ease the pain. When I got up this morning, I noticed that it was swollen. Having my hand pressed against the wall, though only a dream, felt so real that later the skin of my palm peeled off.